Hi there, this is Tim, and in this article, I want to continue to respond to the Seattle Times series, Facebook is Everywhere, where the Seattle Times is talking about the dominance of Facebook, the dangers that presents, and how that can imperil the newspaper industry. Specifically, I think a lot of their claims are weak and misleading and need to be responded to. I know this in the articles, they actually don't provide user comments like they usually do. In this one, I want to go over Facebook Markets Power Leaves News Organizations at Its Mercy by the president of the Seattle Times. So it starts off talking about how much money Facebook makes and its wide reach and how did they get there. And they break it down into three parts. All right. So here's parts I want to respond to. First one is high switching costs. One way to create sites to make switching costs to another social platform difficult. This is exactly what Facebook has done. Then it talks about if you want to move from, since you invest so much effort, such as your photos and your profile information, say you want to leave Facebook and go to another platform, how that's going to be very difficult. All right. Well, yeah, and that's pretty much how every single platform works. So, as an example, I used to work in the car industry, and as you'd expect, there is software for car dealerships to manage their business operations. Now, these are just two random examples, but let's say I have this one and I don't like the rates that you're charging. All right, and I've been using it for a couple of years now. And I want to go over to, let's say, this car dealership software. Well, guess what? It's going to be pretty difficult for me to export my data out of this car's dealership software and then put in the format to import it into this one. So this certainly isn't unique to Facebook. Here's another quick example. A lot of you are probably aware of Salesforce. All right, say I've been using Salesforce for a couple of years and whatever reasons, I want to leave it now. And I want to go over to NetSuite. Same issue. I'm going to have difficulty exporting my data out of Salesforce into usable format so I can import it back into NetSuite. I have a friend who works for a company and they use the Amazon cloud and have a lot of data there. They don't like Amazon's rate. Same thing. They'd rather switch to Microsoft, but Amazon has done a good job of locking their data in such that it's going to be a pain to get it out now. So this point, all right, of high switching cost, yeah, this is what pretty much everyone does. This is industry practice, and they've been doing this for decades. So this is unique. So if you're implying a sinister motive to this, well, you'd have to imply it to the whole industry since everyone is pretty much doing this, all right? I don't know why you're singling out Facebook for this when there are so many other companies who do the same thing. The second point, network effects. As a result of its huge reach, Facebook enjoys a strong network effect, all right? And it just describes that a bit. So what this means is basically, since it's so big, more people are more likely to go over there because of that hugeness. And because it's huge, more people are likely to join it now. Okay, so this is just the circle rolling upon itself. Yeah, and this is typically what happens with first mover advantage. All right, this is the way the market pretty much works. There's nothing bad or sinister about this either. So the third point, access to data. Many of us think Facebook is free. Well, it really isn't. In exchange, you provide your personal data, and good luck if you want to limit that data. So then it resells it to advertisers. So this is true to a point. So I can go to a lot of articles and find how to set my Facebook data and how it's shared. Now, it certainly takes work and effort to do it, but it can certainly get done. And what I find is that more people are just apathetic. They don't care. Now, me, when I created my Facebook profile, I misspelled my name and I put in the wrong birthday. All right. So Facebook really doesn't have any data on me. That was a simple solution. So I don't care that Facebook collects data because it's really not me. All right. So there's lots of different ways you can do that. Okay. It also creates a more targeted user experience, which leads you to spend more time on the site. Okay, well, that's rather self-obvious. It's saying that the more it can refine that site and make it relevant to you, the more time you're going to spend there. Well, yeah, that's just improving the product. You hope it would do that. More time on site means more advertising revenue to Facebook. Okay, this is as relevant as saying the more people who watch a TV program, all right, the higher that TV program can charge for its advertising. Yeah, that's how it works. It also means the platform collects more data, and so it feeds upon itself. Yeah, it's just basically saying that you continue to improve your product, so you're able to charge more for that product. All right. In addition to all of this, Facebook is working hard to expand its walled garden. The platform needs content, needs trusted content, and it also makes money on untrusted content, fake news. Initial design was to have a snippet of news that linked back to the originator's site for details, like the Seattle Times. More and more, the strategy has shifted to provide news within Facebook's site to keep users there for longer periods of time, resulting in more advertising revenue. Yes. So people can be incredibly lazy, and they want their information and their answers now. And when you introduce friction to it, it's less of an experience for them. So let's go over here. So for instance, on Google, I say, I want tomorrow's weather in Miami. Guess what? I get the answer right here. Now, in the old days of Google, Google would show me a link to, say, like the Weather Channel, where I'd have to click on that link, and then I would read another website to get tomorrow's weather forecast in Miami. Google doesn't do that anymore because they know people want the answers right now. All right. And this ultimately is a better user experience. You wouldn't think that clicking on a link would be that big of a deal. But you see, when you look at the user metrics, the more obstacles you put in the way, the lower conversion you have. All right. So this is just part of a good user experience. All right. And Facebook isn't the only people to do this. Everybody wants to keep users within their own ecosystem. All right. How does this impact the Seattle Times? Our newsroom alone in 2019 cost $16 million. This does not include supporting activities. We invest extraordinary dollars to create trusted content that Facebook delivers to its users, now in ways that keeps users on their website, not ours. Okay. So I'm going to go into this a bit. Now, it's a little weird that the Seattle Times is complaining how it's treated by Facebook, since Seattle Times has tools to help mitigate it. So let's go over here. So if I go over to the Seattle Times website and I do a view source, which is over here, and I look at the HTML code, right? There's the meta markup. Now, don't worry, you don't have to understand that. But here is the open graph. So what this does is this optimizes how this page is displayed upon Facebook. So the Seattle Times, they're complaining about Facebook, but they're certainly coding their website to work in conjunction with it. Now, if you don't want the Seattle Times, if Seattle Times doesn't want their content displayed on Facebook, there's something that they can do. Every website has a robots.txt file. Again, for any webmaster worth his salt, he's going to know this. This is not a big deal. It's not heavy tech. All right. This file tells web crawlers or web search engines such as Google if you want them to crawl your website and how. So for instance, I've seen this on certain websites. They want Google to crawl their website, but they don't want Yandex, which is a Russian website search engine, to crawl their website. So let's go back over to Seattle Times. Okay. Now, here is their file. And you can see the directories they're disallowing from being crawled. Yeah, and these are just pretty much operational directories which help the website run that don't have any content in them. But in this file, they could certainly say, Facebook, keep out. And this is a simple 5-minute configuration. They could do this, but they don't. All right, so let's go over here. So Facebook talks about, all right, its crawler, all right, and how to configure it. So it's right here. It's not a big secret. Now, Facebook says when it displays information about the website, you're going to get the title, description, and thumbnail page. So let's go back to this. It's saying Seattle Times is creating trusted content that Facebook delivers to its users. So they're talking to the abstract here, and I want to see a real example of what they really mean. Okay. So in my Facebook page, when I put in a link to Seattle Times, this is what Facebook is displaying. It's displaying the first image in the article, all right, the link, and then the headline of the article. That's it. All right. So when the Seattle Times is saying, hey, Facebook, you're displaying our content, notice they don't actually provide the example of what that content is, but this is it. So this is what the Seattle Times is carping about right here when it says Facebook is displaying its content, all right, which is an image and the headline. Now, if Facebook was displaying too much content for any news organization, I imagine that news organization would be pretty quick to slap down Facebook on a copyright suit and saying, hey, you're displaying our copyrighted material without compensation. You owe us money. All right. Instead, what Facebook is doing is displaying information that's within the amount of fair use. Fair use means you can display a little bit of copyrighted content, all right, for discussion or other points. So, and newspapers do this as well. So think, for instance, when a newspaper does a book review, and they will quote a paragraph out of that book, even though that book is copyrighted, because that paragraph they're quoting, that amount of it is within fair use. Well, that pretty much appears to be what Facebook is doing. And, you know, Seattle Times, if Facebook is displaying too much of your content, then you have a legal remedy available to you, okay? So think about this, put this all together. Seattle Times, they're complaining about Facebook, but they've optimized, or they put in code in their website to help its display on Facebook. They could certainly keep Facebook out of their website with a simple configuration if they chose not to, but they don't. And the content that they're saying that Facebook is displaying very much seems to fall within fair use. Okay, so this is where I think their claim is especially weak. Okay, now going on, the Seattle Times invests millions of dollars to support their advertising efforts. Results of those efforts have declined because of the Facebook platform's dominance. All right, it is very difficult to compete against their vast data pool, and to stay viable, they have to partner with Facebook, but they don't get the same amount of cut. Again, we absorb the cost of sales, and Facebook gets the revenue and profit. So this is no different than saying, let's say you own a company and you sell a product, and you sell those products on your website. Well, you get the full revenue from that product sale. Now, let's say you sell that product on Amazon or eBay. Well, guess what? Amazon and eBay are now going to get a cut of that sales revenue. Now, it's going to be unpleasant, but what you get in exchange for that is access to the hundreds of millions of users on eBay or Facebook. And for many people, that's a worthwhile deal for them to make, all right? Because to spend the money to attract the users to their own website could actually cost them more. Seattle Times, they don't have to advertise on Facebook, all right? But they do because they get access to a great amount of users, which in the end apparently is worth it to them. All right, this is a vicious cycle. Without some change in the model, I fear we'll see further declines in the number of journalists here and a growing number of news deserts. Okay, so this is the last point they're recommending. Congress and the U.S. Justice Department need to level the playing field with the tech platforms. We also encourage Congress to pass the Local Journalism Sustainability Act, which would support local incentives to sustain newspapers. Okay, so this is kind of my last beef. So I'm actually open to the notion of this, but they only have it half right, all right? The Seattle Times, they want the taxpayer money, but they're not suggesting, if you take the taxpayer money, then you also have to be responsible or responding to the taxpayer. That is, let's say I have a legitimate beef against the Seattle Times, and the Seattle Times is taking tax dollars now. Well, there should really be some way where I can get fair consideration of my beef, and if it has merit to it, then that leads to actual change. All right? So let me take a quick example that's in the news right now. So for a long time, newspapers were flogging the Russian collusion in the election narrative with Trump, all right? They flogged that from 2016 to 2018, even though the evidence was extraordinarily weak and it wasn't there and was confirmed by the Mueller report, all right? Then the Mueller report said, nope, there actually wasn't. Okay, so it's not like they corrected themselves. Now, today, time I'm speaking about this, there's credible evidence that Biden Hunter, or that is the presidential candidate's son, used his father and used access to his father to go ahead and get consulting money from a Chinese company. Now, I'm not taking a pro or con stance on this one way or another, all right? Just this story, it hasn't been published from many newspapers. And here's a story that this one guy resigned because he wanted to publish it and the newspaper wouldn't put it in, all right? So this meets the same standard as the Russian narrative, which newspapers were very quick to jump on, all right? But the same standard applied to the other candidate, newspapers aren't running with it, okay? And so I could come over here to Seattle Times and say, look, you're very inconsistent on this. So if you're taking taxpayers' money, you have to respond to that claim, all right? And if it's deemed that you aren't consistent, you have to make corrective action. And so Seattle Times, this is my biggest recommendation to you. If you want taxpayer money, you have to suggest a mechanism to respond to the taxpayer, all right? Without it, you're just saying, give me money and I'm going to do whatever I want with it. And that doesn't fly. Anyway, so I hope this gives you some idea of why I think this article in this series has no merit. It's false and misleading. And at the end of the day, these claims are so weak. To me, what it shows is just the dire circumstances that newspapers are in, that they're willing to perpetuate these very weak and misleading claims. Anyway, I'd love to hear your opinions on this. And likewise, I hope you like this and subscribe. Take care. Cheers.